Welcome to the webinar. We're going to be talking tonight about hands-on STEM, and I think there's some STEAM in here. There's some art stuff happening, especially on Andrea's end. So we should maybe update that. Activities for the classroom. And so we are kind of tailored, we are kind of presenting from a formal K-12 perspective, but that doesn't mean, all of these things we're featuring could certainly be done in informal learning environments as well. And we hope you will use the chat or the Q&A to share with us what all you're doing also, but we'll kind of share with you some of the highlights of our work. So my name is Dana Hain, and I am the K-12 Science Education Manager for UNC Chapel Hill, the Institute for the Environment. I do a lot of teacher professional development programs, also youth science enrichment programs, mostly for high school students. I also do a lot of curriculum development as well, and I love teaching about energy. I've been doing that since 2007, and it's probably one of my most favorite things to teach about because it's so interdisciplinary and because there's just such a need for energy literacy. You cannot watch the news or listen to the news today without hearing an article about energy. So it's just so important, and it touches the lives of every single one of our students. We all rely on electricity. So a lot of our work is focused on educating people about electricity. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about that in a moment. One of the things that I do at UNC is I direct a program called the North Carolina Energy Literacy Fellows Program, which is a year-long teacher professional development program where we learn all about electricity and the grid. We model activities and develop curricula. And we also take a lot of field trips, and we get out on the ground and tour facilities and learn about jobs in the clean energy sector as well. And I invited Andrea to join me tonight. Andrea went through the program several years ago, but has stayed involved as an alumnus. And she is bringing that middle school lens to this webinar tonight. So she teaches at the middle school level, East Burke Middle School, which is in the western part of North Carolina. She also teaches within the CTE track, Career and Technical Education, and Project Lead the Way. So she's going to be kind of coming to us from that CTE angle. And then I do a lot of work with science teachers as well. So I think between the two of us, hopefully we'll touch on things that all of you will find relevant. Let me see if I can advance. So I should have put that, but here's our information. And at the end of the presentation will be our emails, and we can share these slides with you all as well. I mentioned the Energy Literacy Fellows Program. These are just some pictures from when Andrea was in the cohort. This is Andrea with two of her colleagues there at the bottom, touring North Carolina's only onshore wind farm. So that was really a highlight of the program, to go and walk inside the base of one of those turbines. And then we're also at a solar farm in that top picture, learning about how electricity moves from solar panels onto the grid. So it's a lot of fun, and a lot of what we'll be presenting tonight comes from the work we've done with that program. And I thought I'd let Andrea introduce herself and give you a little sense about who she is and what she brings to her classroom.
Did you put a link for the Duke Energy Literacy Fellows stuff in there in case they're interested in joining maybe the next upcoming cohort?
Yeah, I will. We don't have that quite ready yet, but I'll definitely do that.
That is, it's super special. Look into it if you are an energy nut like I am. This is just a little glimpse into my classroom, and this is just one of many projects that I've done. And this is just an engineered design of a plant cell. And, it's not so much energy oriented for the sake of this activity. But we do use robots, and this is kind of the very first interactive model that I've done, and you're going to see how this has transformed and how I've used energy, and I use this kind of same idea for the way that I teach energy in my sustainable energy classes.
Yeah, so Andrea does a lot of hands-on, and a lot of some materials cost money, but some are also very inexpensive and things you'd have around the house that you can bring in. So hopefully you'll see that.
That's right. And I also teach design and modeling with the 3D printing and CAD design. And then I also teach automation and robotics.
Great. So Andrea and I will be kind of just piggybacking off each other, and hopefully that'll make for a little bit more interactive presentation. Again, anytime, feel free to drop questions or comments into the chat. And actually that leads into this. Go ahead if you'd like. Some of you might already do hands-on energy activities with students. We'd love to hear what you do. If you don't, what are the barriers you've encountered? Because maybe we can try to address those tonight. Also, just if you have any questions for us right now that you want to be sure we get to. So just take a moment to give us some feedback in the chat about any of these questions. And we will just try to keep these in mind as we move through the webinar. Homeschoolers too, good. Yeah, a really diverse group tonight. Lack of resources. Yeah, we know that's definitely an issue. Victoria, I don't know where you are. I don't know if donors choose as an option for you. Is that just North Carolina, or is that national? I don't even know.
I think it's national.
Delaware. Okay. Yeah.
But Burroughs Welcome Fund Prism Grant is another really great one. If you're needing, $3,000 or less in supplies, it's a really great one that's relatively easy to get.
And is that beyond North? Do you have to be, can you be outside of North Carolina?
That one's the North Carolina one.
Okay, okay. Good. Jenny, more ideas for resources. We'll definitely cover you there. And we can talk about some funding opportunities as well. All right. Keep those rolling in. So this is a student, one of, I mentioned some youth science enrichment programs. So I have done since 2009, we do summer youth science enrichment programs around energy, and we feature renewable energy a lot, but we do talk about the fundamentals of electricity generation. And so this is a student in one of our programs playing with the KidWind Simple Gen, which is a great little tool to teach about the fundamentals of electricity. And so this is kind of how we're going to organize our webinar. We kind of have it in 3 sections, looking at activities that can be used to talk about fundamentals of electricity generation and circuits in the grid, and then activities to teach about renewable energy, and then also electricity awareness, just basic, where does our electricity come from? How much do we use, et cetera. So these are kind of the 3 different buckets we will talk about in tonight's session. So I mentioned the KidWind already, the Simple Gen. These are just some other pictures from our program. And hopefully, one thing you can do as we go through these slides is just thinking about the opportunities for inquiry that arise when you do these hands-on activities. So for instance, with the KidWind Simple Gen, which is shown there in the bottom left or the far left photo, in this activity, students can play with different numbers of magnets, different numbers of wire wraps to see how that influences electrical generation. So the nice thing about all of these activities highlighted here is that opportunity for inquiry. The middle photo are students using a hand generator to power the bulb, and they can do this and see that some bulbs are easier than others, depending on whether it's an incandescent or a CFL or an LED bulb, for instance. Let me just move and that's also the bottom photo is another hand generator. And then this is a pretty simple activity. The right photo, just copper wire, magnet, and a power source. So pretty inexpensive setup where they learn kind of about the ingredients to generate electricity. And we typically do these types of things before we move into other activities where we might be talking about solar energy or wind energy or coal-fired power plants. So they kind of understand the basic ingredients that are needed to make electricity. And there are many other, these are just some of the ones we've done that have worked really well with students. One teacher in our program, Denise Renfro in Fayetteville, North Carolina, one thing she does to prepare her students before they do the KidWind Simple Gen is she uses the iron magnet filings and magnets to kind of help them visualize the magnetic field. And then she moves into talking about the KidWind, the Simple Gen kit, sorry. Good, looks like there's some chat. So when you get the slide set, we do have a worksheet that we've kind of utilize when we use the KidWin Simple Gen. So this kind of just gets the students, walks them through using it and also collecting data. So it is an opportunity to do some data collection and analysis as well. We also have some favorites in teaching about circuits and also renewable energy. The SNAP Circuits Green Energy Kit, which you can get on Amazon. The price usually varies, like $50 to $70. If you can avoid buying it at Christmas, it's cheaper. But that's a lot of fun. Some of you might already know about SNAP Circuits, but those things can just, they're pretty durable. You can use them over and over again. You can buy extra parts if you lose parts or want to add more parts. And then also the CPO Science Electric Circuits Board. It's a little bit fancier, but it's also very durable given that it's, wood and has some metal, metal parts in it. So these are some options for teaching about circuits for those of you who do that.
And I'll add that the majority of the things that I use with the SNAP circuit sets, you can actually buy these things separately. So if I need something, for example, you can see that handheld generator in the picture there. Those, I think they run around $12 a piece, but those are a really great resource. You can use alligator clips. You don't have to have the SNAP circuit clips, and you can use just regular LED light bulbs and still have the same impact with, less money. So there's other options there too.
Yeah, we've been, KidWin has, and maybe Andrea or someone could drop the link to kidwin.org in the chat. They have a mini power grid workshop that you can sign up for. I think they sometimes offer it for like $10, but they do something with cardboard and circuit tape and little Christmas tree lights. So pretty inexpensive way to create little circuits on cardboard. So that's also something that you all could check out. But learning about circuits, students have fun with that, especially if you just let them figure it out. Don't tell them what to do, but there's a lot of trial and error involved. And in doing that, they're learning a lot about electricity as well as circuits. Andrea, I'll let you do this one.
I am taking a picture of Heather's comment.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay, so these are just a few engineered models, and you're going to see some more as we progress through the slide share. And this is just a way that I've used. This is kind of a combination of things. You can see the whiteboard. All of that was donated to my class, and it's actually the white foam board. But you can see all kinds of ways that we have used recycled goods in order to make models of the power plants. And we encourage, like my students in this case, they don't have an Ozobot path in this one. This was just when I was beginning to start incorporating the Ozobot and kind of just getting a feel for how I wanted to run the Energy Expo project. So these are, I think it's a nuclear power plant on the left and a hydropower plant on the right. And this is just ways that the students have used SNAP circuits to kind of share how electricity is generated in those power plants. And they, of course, are able to talk about it.
Yeah, so I love how you integrated just the pieces there. So those little plastic pieces are from the SNAP circuit kit. So that is neat that you did that. And I think throughout the session tonight, you're going to see how Andrea's Energy Expo project has kind of evolved over the past few years. So that's another neat aspect of this webinar.
And this is the power grid. I think I have a little bit more information about the power grid, but this is a kit that I was actually able to make where the students basically I take all of this stuff and I dump it on the table, and they have to figure out how to take the electricity from what would be represented as a power plant with our battery, and they have to run the electricity and turn on a light in the house.
And how long do you give them to do that? For that challenge?
Usually it takes, my classes about 45 minutes each, and usually it takes about the whole class period for them to, and they don't always figure it out in that amount of time because I don't give them a lot to go on. If trees are in the way of power lines and things, I'm like, try again. Unfortunately, that's not going to work. What can you do to change that?
Great. Yeah, and a lot of these things you buy at like craft stores, and again, these can be reused and added to, and I imagine, you know, some of these are probably not too expensive. You might be able to get some things donated. Some things are, you know, left like after Christmas sales, you might be able to find some things as well. See what's next. And I think you might have just said this. Do you want to add anything to it?
Well, that's something with my Duke Energy Literacy. When I was in that fellowship, there's a stipend where you're allowed to buy energy related materials for your classroom, and that was something that I used to help buy the materials to make these kits.
Yeah, and that reminds me about a grant funder, which someone might have already put into the chat, but your electric company, electric cooperative in North Carolina, we have these bright idea grants. I don't know if they're beyond our state or not, but that's another resource sometimes, especially for energy related projects, is to reach out to your local utility and your electric cooperatives to see what they might be willing to do.
And I will say that the artificial grass there, it sheds terribly on the sides. So now it has been cut to the size of my tables, and it has duct tape all around it. So just let you know ahead of time, it sheds.
That's a helpful tip, right?
You know, I mean, if you're going to go that route, bulletin board paper would have worked, you know, but this is
Let's
just.
see. Do you want me to play this one?
Sure. I mean, you can just kind of show it set up once they finally get it right.
Okay. And I don't know if you can't hear it, I might have to reshare.
Yeah, I'm not hearing any.
Okay, you can't hear it?
Hearing any audio.
Okay, that's fine. I'll stop. There's not too much you're missing, but let me just stop sharing right quick, and then let me reshare, and I'll share my sound, and that way you all can hear it next time. But you didn't miss anything. It was really Andrea just kind of scooping around. Okay, let me go to the next slide. Oh,
let's see.
Here it is.
Trees are out of the way. All right.
Or
We got light on.
All
Looks
right.
like our power grids.
I'm going to go on. We'll come back and talk a little bit more about power grids in a moment. Another nice activity that can be done in conjunction with modeling the power grid is there's a game from the EPA out called EPA's Generate. It's the game of energy choices, and you can download it from their website. If you just Google EPA Generate, you'll find it. It's a competitive board game where each team of students basically is in charge of being grid operators, and they're given different Ziploc bags with different resources. Like some might have a lot of coal-fired power plants, someone might have more nuclear, someone might have a lot of solar. They actually, right now, the game is such that they're modeling 5 different regions of the country, and the students don't know which region they have, but they can eventually maybe try to guess. It's a great activity. Students really like it. I think, Andrea, I don't know if you want to say something here about how you use it with students.
this is actually something I'm getting ready to use with my students. And I've pulled it out. It's going to be a culminating activity towards the end of this 9 weeks. I'm excited about it. And we've played stuff, and I mean, there's a lot of great conversation that comes out of it and lots of problem solving.
Yeah, and it's also, there's some math too. It can be,
Absolutely.
you can make it simple or take it up a notch, depending on like if you want your students to turn in calculations and stuff. But I've played this with like 7th graders all the way up to PhD researchers, and they all love it because it just really gets you thinking, and it really highlights the complexity of the grid in terms of balancing cost with carbon emissions, etc. So definitely check that out. It is, you know, the students do get very engaged, and they like the competition aspect of it. So even though they're not working with like, you know, STEM materials, I would say it's very much a hands-on, minds-on activity. So we'll just pause here. We just kind of went through the electricity fundamentals section. I don't know if there are any questions before we move on. I'll just glance at the chat.
So are you referring to like the supplies for model railroading to use for some of the energy grid stuff? Is that what you're trying to say from your question there? because those would be awesome. And I do
Yeah,
have a friend, Denise Renfro, actually uses model railroad stuff in her
yeah,
projects as well. It does work well.
Yeah, that was that chat came in I think when you were talking about the different where you can get some of these different things, and that was a thought somebody had. There's
yeah.
I haven't seen a lot of other questions in the chat, but some great
Okay.
comments of like where to find other resources
Yeah,
and other things like that. But one just came in. Do you use any of these
I see
activities?
that.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
space
Um,
exploration.
is it possible that we could kind of save that question toward the end? I think I would like to speak about it, but I'd rather talk about it at the end if we can. Is that okay?
I think that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
Will
and
you
we
please
will,
remind me. Please don't let me forget. It's important.
yeah, yeah. And Denise does that too, so we can definitely talk about that. Well,
Okay.
good. Well, we'll move on to our next part. So another thing that Andrea and I both do, a lot of hands-on renewable energy activity. So again, I typically, cover some of those electricity basics first, and then we start learning about wind and wave and solar and hydrogen even as well. So and learning about these also then reinforces how electricity is generated. This is a picture from one of my first summer camps back in 2009, which is hard to believe. These girls are all grown up now, but here they are looking at solar energy, and that's a little handheld solar photovoltaic panel, and then a multimeter there so they can measure the power output. And I know Andrea wants to talk about this, and this would be, I think, great for Girl Scouts and for your kind of outdoor and informal learning opportunities.
It's also a great hands-on activity. Do you mind just going ahead and playing it? I can
Oh,
talk
yeah.
while it's
Yeah.
playing. This just kind of shows the Firefly working, and it's literally it's a turbine with a generator that powers an LED light bulb. And of course, it turns with the wind. And there's a very small amount of soldering, but I think you can get a class pack of these. I want to say maybe 10 of them, 10 or 12 of them. The link should be in the slide share when you get it, but you can order them from Kidwind. I want to say they're $10 or $12 a piece, if I recall, but don't quote me on it now. I haven't come back and looked at the price lately.
And I'll also add to those of you who, do elementary or like with Girl Scouts, I think this is the kind of thing that's also nice for older kids to use with younger kids. So if you have like kids teaching kids, this could be really nice for that. So thinking about that from a kind of an outreach perspective.
So I use this most often when I'm starting to teach about sustainable energy, because so many of our power companies have that one common. You have a turbine that spins a generator that generates electricity. And with this, you can actually see it, and you can see it working. And that kind of brings it home for them.
Mm-hmm. Is it still called the Firefly?
I think so.
Yeah, called the Firefly. Something else that we do, and this does cost a little bit of money, although you don't have to do it as fancy here. You can do this definitely lower cost. But these are from some of our programs. This is Kidwind's wind turbine kit, which is now sold by Vernier. And I just looked today, it's $134 for a wind turbine now. But it's quite fancy with pulleys, and you can do a whole lot with it. But here students are building the wind turbine, but also designing their blades. So you get these balsa wood pieces and you can shape them and cut them. And I know Andrea might do this where the kids can do 3D printing to make their blades. So that's another opportunity as well. You can see the students in the back have, that's cereal cardboard. So one year we did this, kids just brought in like cereal boxes from their recycling bin, and they made their wind turbine blades out of cereal boxes, and we used corks and paper clips, so we definitely did this kind of low cost. And then another fun thing to do is, if you can, have some sort of wind tunnel. So these are teachers in our program last year using a wind tunnel to then test their wind turbine. So it's great for kind of teaching engineering, for teaching about the design thinking process. So you can see a lot of opportunities here for inquiry as well.
Do you want me to go ahead?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the Morganton Arts Design and Engineering competition that we have every year in Morganton. And my first year, I took a team and they did the Junkyard Design Challenge, and they actually made a wind turbine. So because they had had experience with that kid wind experience, that really helped them a lot in the way that they shaped their airfoil designs and everything on their wind turbine. And they actually had they actually generated more electricity than the high schoolers, which I was really impressed with. They 3D printed the hub and they 3D printed the nacelle that the generator is in. But that was
cool.
a great opportunity.
Yeah, I love those blue blades.
That is foam insulation.
Oh, okay, cool.
Insulation board. And it's really great to work with, but if you sand it, it does make a lot of dust. So safety glasses for sure.
And these are just more pictures, and it looks like you also use Vernier energy sensors. So Vernier is another great resource for some energy related materials. So, and
Right.
you can see how to spell it there in the bottom right, and I'll try to put that into the chat as well.
I think maybe the link to it is actually in the slide share at the bottom. And
Okay. Cool.
But they actually had to test in various terrains and they had to adjust their turbines accordingly so that they can make the most electricity.
That's awesome. Another thing that we do with our teachers is we go to the Coastal Studies Institute along the coast of North Carolina, where they have a big wave tank. And then this is a little smaller wave tank here that some of our teachers are trying to get something like this into their classrooms, but they actually have plastic tinker toys, and we use those along with magnets. And they do this with students, and then we do it with teachers. They build wave energy devices. So again, needing to understand the basics of electricity, but it's a great opportunity for them to just build and design. I think there's a lot of art that comes in here, and people have fun thinking about what their design looks like. So very hands-on, and then you can test it and then go back and refine it, test it again. And again, we also turn it into a competition as well. And we have had a few teachers successfully get some grant funding to help them purchase the wave tanks. Like something like this is pretty expensive. This is a fiberglass one, but you could also do, big aquariums or those big silver galvanized steel things as well. So there's different ways you can do that.
Quick question from the chat. Did they design on paper first or trial and error with materials?
Just trial and error. When we do this, they actually get to see, they have a giant wave tank at Coastal Studies Institute where we go and we make observations. They watch buoys move as the wave tank does different things. So they make some observations about waves, and then they take that back and they design. So we don't do the paper, just I think for time, but you certainly could add in a paper piece that we just, whenever we do it, we're kind of pressed for time, but that could certainly be part of the process.
I think Andrea added for the wind turbines that they do the design on paper more. And that's one of the things I really love about some of this work with energy is it really gets into that engineering design as well.
It does.
Absolutely.
The science piece of it.
And with the ones, I was coaching, that was their choice. They did the paper, then they thought, let's move to the cardboard because that's what they were familiar with what we had done in class. They did not have a lot of experience with the foam, so that was a challenge, especially the size of it, but they really did a great job.
Yeah, and all of these activities are so good at kind of reinforcing the different science and engineering practices, right? From the next generation science standards, which our state is finally going to be getting into the science and engineering practices and its standards, which is great. And I know a lot of states are already there. So anyway, you kind of check a lot of boxes when you do some of these design processes. Another, did you go ahead, Andrea?
Well, I was just going to add that, with that, the M.A.D.E competition, it was something that was huge for my administrative team because I had a student who did pretty poorly in his classes who excelled in my class. That was his thing. And then to come out with the winning team with all of that, that was just a really impressive moment because anytime they're allowed to design and stuff like that, you find that they really have some high achievements.
Letting them build and create, and they can take on different roles and find the roles that work for them as well. Another kit that a lot of teachers have liked in our program is Carolina Biological's Hydropower STEM Challenge Kit, and that's it pictured on the left here. You could also make a kit like this probably out of materials you have around your classroom or kitchen. But this is another hands-on thing. We give very little instruction, but the kids make their own like water turbines, and we challenge them to try to see how quickly they can lift up a paper clip. But you could probably also try to connect it to a multimeter as well. And then one of our teachers, Annie Lee, she kind of had her students design water turbines, and then they went to a local waterway to try to test them. I think it was a little shallow that day. It didn't work as well as they had hoped, but it was really neat that she tried to tie the activity to their local waterway. And I'll let you say something here, Andrea. Do you want me to play either of these?
Yeah, the one on the left is this is where we're starting to get the base water power. Sorry, they're just trying to look for the basics of how they're able to get their water wheel to turn in that one. That was actually at one of my engineering camps, and on the other end of the dowel, I want to say that we had weights on the other end of the dowel, and it would spin the weights and we would measure how high it was from the ground. Anyway.
Yeah, you can kind of see it on the right. Yeah.
One on the right hand side, you don't have to show that one, but
okay.
It is a windshield washer fluid container, and on the inside of it, they have a cork dowel right in the middle of it. They've put spoons on the inside so that it can turn, and then they make their own electromagnetic generator. So when it spins, it actually makes electricity. And that was something that we had made in another engineering camp.
That's so neat. I want to be in one of your camps. Sorry.
Seriously, me too. That sounds so
I know. Solar energy is another one. Vernier has a solar energy exploration kit that we use. You can also buy small handheld panels. I like the Vernier one just because it comes with this plastic box tote that is a hinged lid, and that's really nice for testing different angles. So students can really think about the angle of solar panels. And this is also wired so that the solar energy, you can rig this so that it becomes a water pump. So you can have water inside of it, and the solar energy will pump the water. And so the kids really like the water element to this as well. And something else you can do to tie this, if you teach earth environmental science, you could tie this to sun chart analysis, which is where you take into account, your location and the time of year to think about the best angle for solar panels. So that's another way to make, to up the math rigor if you wanted for this type of activity. The solar energy kit, I think the cost has gone up. I want to say it's around $80 or so. So it's not cheap, but you can use it a lot. Yeah, it's $89. It does come with the 3 panels and a multimeter. So you maybe only need a few of these. One thing we've done in our summer camp is had the kids like to wire them together and see if they can charge their cell phone. So you can kind of try to mimic a little solar farm with that. But yeah, you don't need to be as fancy. But again, we've tried to get these things just because we can reuse them over and over for our camps. These are some pictures from Andrea's class. You want to say anything here, Andrea?
I do, but before we move, you mentioned something about the water pump that you could use with solar energy. Well, the KidWind section, the KidWind is designed to be able to do that too with wind turbines.
Right. Yeah.
Something else that you can buy that goes along with it is a water pump.
Yeah, it's just a small little thing.
Yeah. Let's see, that is a solar factory, and it does have the working LED lights. So that's very similar to what we had done in the past. Last year, toward the end of the year, I decided that I wanted to do some solar boat challenges. And so these are gutters with the ends on them. And I gave the kids a big piece of foam. They had to cut it, sandpaper, whatever, shape it, mold it to the design that they wanted. They had to figure out how to balance it, if they needed to add weight to it. And then I used the KidWind motors, and I used the snap circuit turbines. So that I put all kinds of stuff together. You never know in my class. We use what we have, right? But do you mind showing that last video there? It's
No.
Set.
short.
Release. Uh-oh. Hold on. And winner.
But we really had a good time. By the time it was over, they were all chanting and cheering. And of course, we still had some that got stuck.
That's awesome. And we have 20 minutes left, Andrea, so we probably need to go a little bit. Solar houses are another one, right? You can see that here. And there's a little snap circuit. I don't know if you can see my mouse or not. Can you see my mouse?
Yes.
So there's a little snap circuit piece inside the solar house. Do you want to add anything to this slide? Okay. So yeah, we do have just a lot of pictures. Hydrogen fuel cells are another thing that Andrea and I think both have done with students. Horizon is a resource for a lot of like solar hydrogen science stuff. So here are students learning about hydrogen fuel cells, and they're doing this prior to going to tour some chemistry labs at UNC to learn about research taking place. And Andrea, do you want to say anything about your boat?
That was one of the first experiences where we used the OzoBot to travel a path around.
Oh, yeah, right here.
The very first ones.
For people who don't know what OzoBots are, do you want to tell them now?
Nope.
Or you want to wait? Okay, we'll come back to that. I'm going to skip this part because we're going to, oh, good. So Andrea is now going to tell you how she put some of this together into bigger classroom projects.
Okay, trying to save my time. Here we go. I do an energy expo project with my students, and you can go ahead and advance to the other slides because they'll have access to this. For the must-haves, the kids have to make, in this case, a power plant. Okay, so my teaching has transformed. I used to have them do a slide share. They had to do a research in small groups. They had to engineer a prototype that was related to their sustainable energy source. But what I was finding was, to be honest with you, I was bored as a teacher. And I know if I'm bored as a teacher, that they're probably not as engaged as I want them to be. So I took the slide share out and I gave them a piece of paper, and they had to become entrepreneurs. They made their own power company, and they had to give it a name. They had to come up with a logo, a jingle to go along with it. And you can see on this one, Gen Z waterways. So there's this hydroelectricity energy that's made easy. That's their logo or their little slogan. I love it. And then on the inside of it, we still have how it works, which was one of my slide share questions, the pros and the cons. It's the same thing, but the kids were 10 times more engaged doing it this way. So I'm planning to continue doing it this way. If slide shares are your thing, go for it. But what I was finding was a lot of the students, you know, they want one person to do the slide share and they don't really want to be involved in it. Here, I saw the engagement. You can go ahead and advance, I think. This one is sunny side up solar, and you can see the OzoBot coded path. Really impressive. It's still their design of a solar house. It still has lights and things that work inside. You can go ahead and advance. And this one is actually a biomass company. And if you go to the next slide, I think it's, well, it didn't show up. Well, phooey. I have another slide in there, and I don't know if maybe it just wasn't refreshed or what, but I don't want you to have to refresh.
You want me to try it?
If you don't mind, it might. I don't know if it'll start us over. I'm sorry.
No, I don't think it will.
Shows that picture long so that you can see the whole picture.
Oh yeah,
Do you see it?
I think I just needed to refresh. Let me just share again.
There you go. Now you can see. So this is their biomass company. And they have, of course, their trees, and then they have their device for making the trees into the wood pellets, and they have all of that. What students have to do is they make a script, and Dana, you can just kind of scroll through them if you want to, because they're all kind of all related. Oh, I need to talk about this. That is the coolest engineered generator or turbine that I've ever seen.
That is cool.
That is so cool. It is like takeout lids from like Olive Garden that have all of the weird ridges in them that are kind of really hard plastic. I've never seen anybody do this before. They cut out just little slits in the middle, and when they put it all together, it wrapped right around those Sundrop bottles and instant turbine. It was great.
That's cool. Do you want me to
But
flip through?
use that, sure. We just use a lot of recycled goods. You can just keep going. They can go back and watch the video if they want to. Just lots of creativity, lots of art. This is an opportunity for my students to shine because they don't have a lot of opportunities in the classroom to be creative. Here it is. This is a pretty good one if you want to share that one.
Hi, I'm Lillian.
I'm Maria,
And I'm Gordon.
and this is our Energy Expo program.
Our energy source is solar energy, and we created a small city model to show how solar energy gives us the energy we need on a day-to-day basis.
First, we have a solar energy farm. This is where some solar panels are stored. A solar farm usually is between $21,250 and $42,500.
What does a solar panel farm do?
So the solar panel farm takes the rays of sunlight and converts them into an electrical power grid that powers the city.
As you can see,
They kind of get the idea.
solar farm
So
goes
with this one, they put snap circuits on there and they were able to spin the generator. They made a street light light up, and they were talking about how at night the energy is stored in batteries and then it can be used later on. But the picture on the top, that's our little Ozobot, and they run roughly around $100 if that hasn't changed. Grants are perfect for buying Ozobots. I do have a class set of these, but I can tell you from experience, you really only need just one or two to still make the job work. You really don't have to have a class set of these, but they can be coated with markers, or you can use them with Chromebooks, iPads. It has a digital coating as well that you can use with it. But kids write their own scripts, and you'll notice everybody has to speak when they're doing the voiceover. We actually used Scratch and recorded their voiceover, so it's actually coded. So if time remains, someone mentioned a makey in the comments. Yes, you can do a really simple circuit. And what I've done is I wrap copper tape around my Ozobots so that when it travels on its coded path, it completes the circuit, and then it triggers, of course, through the makey. It makes the computer do the voiceover. But
So cool.
Kind of a Jurassic Park tour kind of thing, but energy related.
So neat. Go to the next slide.
That's just more different examples.
Yeah.
And there's more snap circuits there. That was a wind farm, I think, that they had used. This one was a geothermal plant. Again, snap circuits. I do have some switches in there, but you saw he just walked by. The presentations are awesome because the kids take ownership of their learning, and they're really quick to share what they've learned.
Awesome. We have just a few more slides and then we can take questions. Another way to do some hands-on energy activities is through electricity awareness. And another favorite item is this kilowatt meter on the far left here, which can be purchased somewhere between $15 and $25. There are different brands available, but we, in our summer camp, we let students take these home for a week. They borrow them and bring them back. But you could also, we have teachers that will set them up, have a couple of them, and they'll do stations around the room. Like they might have their students look at a desk lamp, for instance, or a toaster oven, just different things you might have around the classroom. But this basically monitors how much electricity is being consumed by a device. And then you can use that to do some calculations, like how much coal is being used to power that device annually, for instance. You can also have them look at the output of different light bulbs like CFL, LED, and incandescent. That's a fun activity. And we also encourage students to learn how to read their electric meter, or to give them sample data if they can't access an electric meter, learn how to read it and understand that process.
It's also a really
So,
good way to talk about phantom loads, because students understand what that means.
Yeah, that's a good point. And this is a worksheet we use. We incorporate our local electricity pricing. We have some pretty inexpensive electricity in the state of North Carolina. So this is also a worksheet that can be easily adapted. And yeah, phantom load is how you can calculate electricity that appliances use, even when you're not technically using the device. And I think the average home is said to have like 25 things with phantom load. So that can really add up over time, and it can add up when you think about a whole neighborhood. Or we've even done this at UNC. We calculated phantom load many years ago, and it was pretty significant when you add it up all the dorm rooms, for instance. I mentioned the light bulbs already. That's a fun activity. The students like that. And I think we're kind of wrapping up here, thinking about benefits of hands-on activities for learners. I mean, we're probably teaching to the choir here. But also benefits for the teacher, like Andrea mentioned one in terms of her own kind of reinvigoration in moving to a more hands-on approach. So Andrea, I'll let you kind of talk about anything from these next two slides.
Sure. Well, I mean, you can tell I love teaching with hands-on. I mean, I love it. I live for it. This is my jam. Okay. But I will tell you that students love my class. And that's one of the biggest reasons why, is because, as a CTE teacher, I think Dana quoted once that sometimes we have maybe a little more time and freedom to explore hands-on stuff, but that also makes us really valuable resources, because we can provide the staff that we have with resources and ways that they can integrate STEM into their own classrooms. So aside from the benefits of the kids just being there and taking ownership and pride in their work and really shining, this is a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, I love that. I think I'd like to start doing more in our state, where we're getting science teachers and CTE teachers to partner and think about how they can really leverage their resources and their students and what they're teaching. Mm-hmm. Do you want to say anything more about benefits for teachers?
No, I think that's things that they can.
Good.
Just because
another thing that we've done often is we'll pair a field trip with a hands-on activity. So these are all pictures from our programs where we might go to a solar farm and then do a solar energy activity. Or here's the wave tank I mentioned earlier. So this is a teacher making observations before they develop their device. We tour a hydropower plant before we do the hydropower activity. So that's something else you could consider doing as this kind of package deal when that's possible. And then during the pandemic, when we had to do things virtually, I discovered Goosechase Scavenger Hunt, which I love. And this is a phone app that your students can download. And as educators, you can get a free account, which lets you do, I think, up to 5 teams. But we send them out on missions that are related to the grid, like going to look for a transmission line or look at their electrical outlet. So these are all pictures from our programs. And that's just been another way to have something be really interactive and get kids exploring, or teachers exploring, their community from this kind of new lens. So it's hands-on in a different way, but that's been really well received. And I think we'll pause here with questions. I just want to acknowledge the funders for our program. Duke Energy Foundation funds the Energy Literacy Fellows program. And then I'm funded also through the Center for Public Engagement with Science at the UNC Institute for the Environment. So we certainly appreciate the support of all of these entities. And then here is Andrea's contact information. And maybe Andrea, you can put your email into the chat as well.
Sure.
And then I'll put mine up in a moment. But and space questions, Adrian just
I
reminded
haven't
us.
forgotten her.
Okay.
Before you get to questions, can I just really, with all the acknowledgements and things, I just want to jump in really like 30 seconds and just say, we were, so, and then on the clean side, we have a lot of these resources too. So if you're looking for resources for teaching about energy, we have several, like quite a few of Dana's resources she's developed on doing these activities in the clean collection. We have Kidwind, they recently updated their resources. We're having to re-review some of them, but they're going through review right now and they should be ingested over the summer. So, you know, for one-stop shop for looking for some of these things, you know, come back to these slides. I'll collect from Dana. We will share them out through the email that goes out to you after Zoom. But also in the future, if you're like, wait, how do I do some of this stuff? Don't forget, you know, to check in the clean collection. This is, you know, we review resources to make sure they're quality and we find them from many different people. And it's a nice one place to sort of look for some of this stuff. There's ideas in our teaching guidance on how to teach about energy, how to bring energy in your classroom, and it links back to resources about different energy topics as well, based on the energy literacy principles and things like that. So I just wanted to kind of mention that, like, this is like such a great webinar. And I love that you all like bring this information in terms of how do you actually do this. And we can't put some of the things in clean, like the kits that cost money and stuff, because that's one of the things that we, you know, tout is everything in clean is free for the classrooms and stuff like that. But I just wanted to mention that, like, if you know, get a year down the road and you're like, wait, what was that one thing? You can always search in clean and reach out to us at clean as well. Put our email in the chat as well. And with that, please put any other questions you have in the chat. And Andrea, please, yes, go.
Okay.
Answer about the space exploration
question. Okay, so that's something that I've actually been working for. I wrote a grant and I found out in March I was actually called to Raleigh to go and interview. So I'm hoping and praying that that I'm chosen for this grant. But it's all completely revolved around space. And the way that I want this program to work is it's a 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade effort. My 6th graders are going to use Oculus devices and virtual reality. And so they're going to take like virtual tours. They're going to be using the tilt brush application, and they're going to design dwelling places, homes that we can 3D print and put on a Mars map. And I have a class size Mars map was awarded. So when I said, you know, don't be afraid to go out there when people are giving away stuff or sign up for this award or sign up for this grant, don't be afraid to put yourself out there, because you'd be surprised at what you can accomplish. And, you know, I've found through the years that if you don't do it and if you don't take care of yourself, most of the time it's not going to happen, because you know, if I can wait on other people, it usually doesn't happen. But if I put myself out there, usually it benefits in one way or another. But the dwelling places are there. My 7th graders, I want to do hydroponics and aquaponics. And I want to do indoor gardens so that they can learn about sustainable, like new ways that they could grow food. So alternative ways of growing food. I want them to look at entrepreneurship opportunities and talk with local restaurants about the sustainability of the plants and things. But they're going to take the plants that they feel that they could grow, and that's going to kind of be their contribution. 7th grades, and then 8th grade are going to be designing Mars rovers with 3D printed like scoops and shovels and things. So the 8th graders have to communicate. They all communicate as one big unit. It's one big project. 6th graders, 7th graders, and 8th graders are all going to be communicating to make this thing happen, because engineers, they talk with one another and they may never even meet each other. They have to have that communication piece. So at the end, the Mars rovers will be distributing the food, and it autonomously driving from dwelling place to dwelling place. So, you know, that's kind of the way that's the approach I'm going with space and things like that. But we also talk about, you know, the Mars rovers that were up there for a long time, they had a lot of issues with solar panels because of the dust storms. And so when the dust would go across the solar panels, they didn't have enough electricity and they thought they were not going to be able to use them. NASA had to be really creative with those. There's a great documentary. I want to say it's on Netflix or Disney Plus, can't remember. that's about spirit and opportunity. And that's a really great resource to kind of get your mind around the energy related stuff. But also the new Perseverance Mars rover, I believe it has nuclear energy, somehow kind of nuclear energy involvement there. So definitely a lot of opportunities for talking about energy.
Yeah, and one of our teachers, Denise, and Adrian, I think it was you that asked about space, but our teacher I could connect you with, she has her students design like a little energy, for Mars, like assuming we're going to live on Mars, they have to come up with how they would power their Mars colony. They have to think about their needs and space and all. So there's some math involved as well. So that's another connection that I could make with you as well to make that space connection.